Hey, welcome back to Music Theory Logic, and happy holidays. Filming this like 3 days before Christmas. I figured it would be fun to use our music theory knowledge to try to look at some Christmas melodies. And I even put on my semi-Christmas beanie to do this. So let's go ahead into the logic session. The topic of the beanie, I was looking for a Santa cap, but I do not have one, unfortunately. So, yeah, you are probably all really familiar with these songs. Happy or Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa, whatever you celebrate. Happy if you are, really familiar with music culture, regardless of what you celebrate. You probably heard these melodies. So I did them all in the key of C major, just to give you a little bit of a music theory review. C major is going to be all of the white keys on a piano. Typically, we'll talk about it from starting from C and going up to C. And in the key of C major, we have three most common chords. And those three most common chords are a C major, which our first song is going to be Jingle Bells, we see in the beginning. Second most common chord is going to be a G major or a G7. We see that chord right before the end here. And then our third most common chord in the key of C major is F major. Now, F major and G major are so common, they actually get special names. So in music theory, in the key of C major, we call C major the tonic or the one chord. We call F major the subdominant or the four chord. And we call G major or G7 the dominant or dominant seventh, or the 5 and 5/7 in the key of C major. So the songs that I have done for us to look at are, let's actually duplicate this and put We Wish You a Merry up there, just so it's a better sound. So the songs I covered are Jingle Bells, Silent Night, Deck the Halls, White Christmas, and We Wish You a Merry Christmas. So let's go ahead and go through each of these. So I outlined the chords already for Jingle Bells. Let's listen to it, and I'll have it playing so you can see it. Cool. So let's go through this melody. Basically, we're in the key of C major. The note that we're playing is the third. That is an E. It goes E, 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 G, C, D, E. Then when we go to this F major chord, we're up at F. That makes sense. So the chord we're playing is an F major. The melody note is an F. You'll notice that this chord is inverted, so I don't have F in the bottom. This would be basically a second inversion. It's the fifth. The C is in the bass, so we've got F, A, C, like that. Then we come back to C major when the melody comes to E, and then at the very end when we go D, G, the first ending and the second ending, we are going to be on our G7 chord. I could have put that to G major. It would also work. Cool. So this one is super basic. That's why I started with it. We can really see where these notes come from. There is sort of like an A, B phrasing and then A, B prime. So a lot of times when we are describing phrasing or melodies, we will give phrases letters just so that we can break down what the sort of question and answer or how phrase 1, phrase 2 of any melody. So we basically see the first 4 measures is an idea. I'm calling that A. The second 4 measures is an idea. I'm calling that B. We get the exact same A, so that's why I called it A again. And then we almost get the same B, but we get a different ending. So I'm going to call that B prime or B variation. Cool. So that gives us our Jingle Bells. I'll play it one more time. So hopefully that was easy enough to follow. Now we're going to look at Deck the Halls. It's essentially the first main section of Deck the Halls. I wanted to cover more melodies instead of take one song and cover it, just because, I don't know, these Christmas songs are pretty simple, and I thought it'd be more fun to do like 5 melodies. So that's what we're going to do. So Deck the Halls, this is Deck the Halls in C major. Basically, we're using the same 3 chords. So we start on the 1 chord, then we get that 4 chord in the second or third measure. Then we get a 5-7, back to the 1, and that same chord progression repeats. So I basically have the same section repeating twice. Let's listen to this. Nice. Cool. So the melodic notes are going G, F, E, D, C, D, E, C, and then a little sequence here: D, E, F, D, E, D, C, B, C, and that repeats. So if we're talking about the letters for this melody, dun 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 dun, that might be an idea. We could call that A. Dun 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 dun. That's almost like the answer, so we could call that B. Obviously, if we kept going in the Deck the Halls, we get more melodic movement. But I wanted to cover just the main theme, and here it is. So once again, we get C major for the first 2 measures. We get F major on the 3rd measure, and then on the 4th measure, we get G7 back to C major. Let's listen to this one more time while we watch it. Cool. So again, I put these all in C major, so we're only using the white keys, or if we're only using chords within C major, which some of these melodies are going to get a little bit more complicated, which is sort of the way I designed this. So our next song is Silent Night. So the first 2 songs we did were in 4/4. That's a time signature. So what that means is that those have 4 beats per measure, and each beat is a quarter note. That's that bottom number. Now we're going to Silent Night, and some of these transcriptions you'll see Silent Night in 3/4, and originally, and you'll also see it in 6/8. So 3 times 2 is 6. So you can write things in 3/4 in 6/8. Technically, the phrasing tells us that we really want this to be in 6/8. However, in more beginner methods, because 6/8 is slightly more complicated time signature, you'll see this in 3/4. So just as a caveat. So 6/8 means we have 6 beats per measure, and each beat is an 1/8 note. If we were to divide 6 by 2, that would be 3, and 8 by 2, that's 4. So that's why this would work as 3/4 as well. Cool. So chord-wise, we're using the same 4 chords, or same 3 chords, that 1, 4, and 5. So we start on the 1 for 2 measures, then we go to the 5 chord, we come back to the 1 chord, we get the 4 chord, 1, 4, 1, 5, 1, 1, 5, 1. Cool. And this is probably one of my personal favorites, and I will discuss why after we hear it. So here is Silent Night. Cool. I think some of that MIDI was overlapping. That's why we didn't hear that chord. Cool. So let's talk about this. So one of the reasons I like this Christmas song a lot is it's not as just like happy as the typical holiday music. And part of the reason for that is the melody that we have going G, A, G, E. So we're in the key of C major, but we're using that sixth note, and we're using this minor third, G and E, from this C major chord, so these top interval. That gives the melody some sort of, not darkness, but a little bit of contrast, which again is why I really like this song. So we get a lot of stuff happening here. We basically get a repetition for the first measure, so that's G, A, G, E. That repeats G, A, G, E. Then we get this second pattern. It's basically D, D, B, C, C, G. So this is almost a sequence, a pattern, if you will, going from high, high, low, and then middle, middle, lower. Then we come to measure 4. This is where we move back to the 4 chord. This is basically our B prime, or our second large melodic section. We could think about this a few different ways. We basically go A, C, B, A, and then this G, A, G, E. Notice that this measure is actually the same thing as over here. So we could think of this as what's a fancy word would be diminution. So we have this melodic phrase, but we're basically adding stuff in. So we could call that an ornament, or diminution, in the sense that we're like repeating that melody faster in the melodic structure than we were before, where we're sort of doing it every 2 measures and now it's every other measure. Play it from there. Cool. So this final measure, we get a little bit more tension. We have been doing D, D, B. Now we're going up and hitting this F note on top of the G major chord that's happening. That makes this a G7. So this note adds some contrast to the melody. That's also super common to get the 5/7 harmony as you approach the ending of these sort of common melodies. D, D, F, D, B. So this is actually a diminished triad arpeggio, B, D, F. That's also the top half of a G7 chord. So again, this is sort of outlining G7. It's going back to C major, so C, E. All right. Then we get this arpeggio run, C, G, E. That's a C major arpeggio. And then we get basically that G7, G, F, D. On top of a G. Again, that F makes that a G7, and then back to the 1. So again, we're only using the same 3 chords, the 1, the 4, and the 5. We're ending on our 1 chord, or our 1 note, which is super common. But one of the things that happens differently is that we didn't actually even hit the 1 note melodically until, what is this, like the 4th measure of the melody. So again, I think Silent Night is slightly more interesting, and I like it. Now, speaking of interesting, we are moving along here, picking up the complexity, if you will. So we're going to White Christmas. Now, White Christmas, to me and to my ears, when slightly more jazz-influenced Christmas song. So luckily for us, it's rhythmically slightly simpler. We're going back to 4/4. I will play this and then I'll break down the melody and the chords. You'll notice really quickly that the chords are a little bit more sophisticated or interesting, jazz influenced. Here we go. Cool. So this melody gives us the opportunity to talk about a few black keys and how we can add those black keys in even though we are still in the key of C major. which again doesn't have black keys. Cool. So first I'll run through the chord progression. I'll talk about where those come from, and then we'll start with the melody and how the chords basically are harmonizing the melody. So we start out E, E, F, E, D sharp, E. This D sharp, E is essentially a passing tone. We also have the F sharp on the bottom. That passing tone sort of establishes that like half step or that chromatic nature of the melody, which is going to allow us to do some of the stuff coming up next. So E, F, E, D sharp, E, going up to F, and then F sharp, G. So this is another chromatic passing tone. So the F sharp also works because that is in the key of G major. That's the chord that follows. However, on top of this F sharp, we are actually using an F sharp major chord, or an F sharp 7. That is essentially a chord that it's sort of like a parallel harmony. We're going to G7. We come from F sharp 7, so it's just like taking the same chord and transposing it a half step up. It sounds really kind of noticeable. So that's where that note comes from. Then we get some fully just tonal stuff. So A, B, C, D, C, B, A, G. All right, just a scale run. We're doing that over C major, in F major harmony, again in that second inversion. So starting on A, that note's in our F major chord. Cool. Our next, we end on a G here. Don't want to move that. The chords we get are 1, then 5, 7. So that's C, G7. We go back to C here. Cool. So that's C major going C, D, E, E, and then our chord changes here. We get a C 7, so a 1, 7. That's a chord that this B flat is not in our key. However, this is very common in jazz music and blues music. That note, technically, we would call this a modal movement. So that's from Mixolydian. So in Mixolydian, the one chord has is a 1/7 because the seventh note of Mixolydian is flatted. That's sort of like our G7. The reason this works is we're going to F major next. So C7 is the 5/7 of F major. So we would call this what is a fancy thing, a secondary dominant. So this secondary dominant, that's C7, is going to F major, and that's where that works. Then we go to a parallel minor, super interesting, F minor. Because we had F major before, going major, then minor, that's a sort of transposition, but it works because if you hear like a major chord and then that same chord but minor, we're used to that sliding. It works also because 2 of the 3 notes will be common. We're just changing that middle note. Then coming along here, back to C major. Then we get, for the first time, essentially, it's sort of like an A minor, except we have an F chord. So this is an F major in first inversion. Because we get that minor third on the bottom, that gives that chord a little bit more tension. Cool. So going to our final 3 chords, this is a minor 2. That's a D minor chord, D, F, and A, with another D on top. This is that 5 chord, the G, G, B, D. This is not a 5/7. We do not have the note F. Then coming back to our C major, basically just a bigger voicing. So this White Christmas gives us the opportunity again to talk about that secondary dominant. So that's when we got that C7 chord going to F major. These passing tones, so melody that uses notes that are out of key. It's really cool sounding, and you should definitely try to add some passing tones or add some chromatic motion in your melodies. Nice. Going to our very final melody for the day. It's going to be We Wish You a Merry Christmas. This one is in 3/4. So that, again, that's really similar to Silent Night, which was in 6/8. Cool. This one we actually get a pickup. So a pickup is when a melody begins before the downbeat. And I should technically have this ending there because the rule is that any song that begins with a pickup has to end with a measure that is also incomplete, and together both of which would add to one complete measure. Cool. Let's listen to it and then I'll talk about it. Nice. I don't know why that MIDI instrument gave it some delay. Let's hear it one more time. Cool. So again, this is just the first half or the main theme of our We Wish You a Merry Christmas. So again, the top line is basically the melody that we would sing. So we happens on the last quarter note in this 3/4. The chords of We Wish You a Merry Christmas are actually a lot more interesting, and the melody is too. So we basically have sequence happening where this is one thing, G, C, C, D, C, B, A, A, A. So this is like one idea, and then we do the same essentially idea, just moving up in the key. So D, D, E, D, C, B, G, G. So this is like an A prime. So whereas before we saw this A, B thing happening, now we got like A prime, and then a third version starting on E, 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 F, E, D, C, A, G. What's cool is that you can notice that this is a pattern. And again, the word we use for patterns applied to melodies is a sequence. So We Wish You a Merry Christmas has this sequential melodic motion or sequence happening here. Cool. And then at the very end, we get a total departure from what we had been doing. We get the A, D, B, C, which basically is like a B or an ending. So we get like A prime, A second prime, and then B perhaps for our melody. Cool. Let's talk about the chords. And this is the reason I left this song for the final one to talk about, because we get some interesting chords. So we're trying to get my view right there. So we start on the 1 chord. We've seen that before. We then get that 4 chord. That's our F major. We've seen that before. But then, hold up, we get a D major. We haven't seen that before. But we saw it in the last song, the idea of a secondary dominant. So D major is not in the key of C major. However, it is the 5 chord, and it is in the key of G major, which is the next chord. So when we're harmonizing melodies, one of the things that we can do is we can borrow chords from other scales or other keys from which, like, we have chords in our key. So we're going to G major, so we're using a chord from the key of G major. G, that chord is not in the key of C major. However, it's in G. So as long as we do a G major chord before we do other C major stuff, it's going to work. And that's what secondary dominant means. So that's D major, 5 or to G major. So what's interesting is it's like 1, 4, and then 5 of 5, 5. We then go up to this secondary dominant continues. We get an E7 chord, or I guess not an E7 until we hit that D note, but an E major chord. This is also not in the key of C major. Where does it come from? It comes from the next chord. So the next chord we have is an A minor. This is in the key of C major. That's a 6 chord. This is a 5, a dominant from A, really harmonic minor, but in the key that is coming up. That works. It also works because this harmonic pattern repeats. So this is a secondary dominant 5, and then second dominant 6. So you can see, that 5 of 5, 5, 5 of 6, 6. It's a pattern, which we like in music. Cool. Then we get a D minor chord. Kind of interesting because we've seen a D major, but this is the chord we expect to see in our key of G or C major. And then we get our G chord, super expected. That's the 5 to our 1 chord. What's interesting is this minor 2, 5, 1 were the same chords we used at the end of White Christmas. Cool. So we get a lot of overlap between all of this Christmas music. So let's just review the overlap we saw. Most of holiday music and most festive music is in major keys. Major keys are happier, so it makes sense that celebratory music would be in major keys. We saw that most of these songs all use the 1, the 4, and the 5 chord progression. And then we saw even some melodic stuff happening. You'll notice at the end of Jingle Bells, we get G, G, F, D, C. Jumping ahead to Silent Night, we actually get that same ending, G, G, F, D, C, on top of the 5 chord. At the ending of the White Christmas song, we got the D minor, minor 2, 5, 1. We got that same cadence at the end of We Wish You a Merry Christmas. That was minor 2, 5, 1. Let's hear that. Cool. So hopefully you found this helpful. Today we examined 5 different famous holiday melodies. And once again, regardless of what you celebrate, I hope you have an awesome December. It's been strange for all of us with this COVID stuff, but I personally am going to try to pretend it's a normal few days when I'm not working and with family as safe as that I can be. So I hope you and your family are staying safe out there. Thank you for tuning in. Hopefully you enjoyed looking at these famous melodies. They will... I'm sure we'll all be sick of them very soon. So I wanted to do this video while you could still stand listening to them. So if you found it helpful, you'd help me out by subscribing to the channel. And if you do, I hope to see you next time. Cheers.